Well, I believe it's official. The human race um, is officially screwed. There are certain statistics that just kind of prove the point, I should say. This video goes out to all my doomers out there. Any doomers? There's a site I visit periodically. Not that often, but periodically. And it's got a great name. WakingTimes.com. Article here. Not just bees, but all insects are in decline and heading for extinction. Now let's think about what happens when part of the food chain, a very important part of the food chain, becomes extinct. That means other parts of the food chain that relied on those parts of the food chain have a lot more stress on them to survive. And if any part of the first part of the food chain dies and it was the sole diet of another part of the food chain, that part of the food chain is finished. Some interesting numbers, some stats in here. And this goes back to, I think, the mid-1990s or so. So we're not talking that long ago at all. Researchers are feverishly working to understand the global die-off of the world's bee species and have linked colony collapse disorder to the use of neonicotinoid pesticides, along with other common agrochemicals. Bonus, some of which definitely come from Monsanto. As it turns out, the impact of modern industrial agriculture and widespread chemical contamination of our environment is not just affecting the bees, but also contributing to the loss of all insects. And some scientists believe we are moving in the direction of mass extinction. Several studies by entomologists in recent years support this notion and raise the flag for greater concern. German researchers with the Krefeld Entomological Association have since, at least 1989, been conducting an annual experiment measuring the volume of summer insects in the western German state of North Rhine-Westphalia. Trapping migratory and mating insects in the wild has proven there is indeed a significant reduction in populations of many species of invertebrates. One of the things they said was the average biomass of insects caught between May and October has steadily decreased from about 3.5 pounds per trap in 1989. Got that wrong. I thought it was the mid-90s, 1989. So these traps that they test from May to October per trap, 3.5 pounds, which again would be the biomass of the weight of these insects caught. And now 3.5 pounds is recently 10.6 ounces as of 2014, so 2 years ago. A decline this noteworthy should be of great concern for anyone interested in the future of food production and the survival of the ecosystem as a whole, as insects are not only needed for pollination of many staple food crops, they also provide food for many animals and birds who would follow bugs into extinction. Quote, the decline is dramatic and depressing, and it affects all kinds of insects, including butterflies, wild bees, and hoverflies, says Martin Sorg from the Krefeld Entomological Association. Additionally, another recent study conducted by researchers from the Technical University of Munich and the Sunchenberg Natural History Museum of Frankfurt supports and substantiates previous research, observing a nature reserve in the Bavarian city of Regensburg. Scientists found that, quote, the number of recorded butterfly and burnet moth species has declined from 117 in 1840 to only 71 as of 2013, a large enough decrease to at least suggest that conservation efforts thus far have failed to contribute to the preservation of insect species. The Frankfurt study also indicated, as a cause for such decline, the harmful ongoing effects of the overuse of nitrogen-based fertilizers and chemical pesticides, which are being used in ever greater quantities around the world, produced and promoted by chemical giants like Cargill, DuPont, and the globally despised Monsanto, also called Monsantin from a few other people. I remember watching a documentary, this was a few years ago, and this one was actually on, television. Didn't have to find this one on the internet. History Channel or something along those lines, one of those channels. And it went and showed this, I don't know if it was an ancient Mayan civilization or some other ancient civilization, but it was definitely an ancient civilization. Nobody lives there anymore. There's some ruins around, very, very old. And it was on this hilltop or mountainside, and it was stepped all the way up. They had this area that had these steps all the way up. And it wasn't as in steps like for you to climb necessarily like a staircase or, steps up the pyramid. But these were rows and rows and rows where they would grow crops. And they were taking soil samples and all kinds of stuff. And the soil right there today, with no human beings around for God knows how long, was fantastically fertile, nutrient rich, unbelievably. And they also determined, wow, they must have used some type of slash and burn technique as well, which essentially is when you burn up overbrush or some of the older remaining crops, like it's out of season, they're wilted, whatever, you burn all that stuff up. They would also sometimes grab, whether it's leaves, sticks from trees, fallen branches, that kind of thing, put it on around the whole area, set it on fire. That creates ash. They mix it in with the soil. It makes this nutrient-rich soil. So I remember seeing that, thinking to myself, imagine that. Fantastic growing. The samples they said that they put out there were just the most perfect soil, just fantastic. You could grow in there immediately. And I thought to myself, man, how is that possible? Ancient, dumbed down, moronic man, not using chemical fertilizers and Monsanto and DuPont and friends or pesticides, were able to grow unbelievably so. And they showed something that was also interesting to me, which isn't really related to this, but I'm going to mention it because it was cool. And that was, they showed how high this little mountainside was with all these rows going up. And they would talk about how the lower rows, let's say, for example, during summer, you could grow certain things, but it was too hot to grow other things. But if you go higher up the mountainside with these rows, it got much cooler. So essentially, they could grow stuff year round. It just depends on what season it was. Would for them depend on which level of rows they would start growing certain things on. So essentially, all year long, they could just grow stuff. Now I don't know about when winter came. Could they go to the very bottom and grow, or they just stocked up enough for next year, or whatever. But bottom line is, they grew all over the place, and they didn't do it with chemical fertilizers, weed be gone, Roundup ready. No. Nope, just the old-fashioned way. These data on species composition changes and the general trends of modifications may reflect effects from climate change and atmospheric nitrogen loads, as indicated by the ecological characteristics of host plant species and local changes in habitat configuration with increasing fragmentation. Furthermore, another study in 2014 documented a worldwide decline in insect and invertebrate populations, reinforcing concern that this issue is not limited to any specific geographical region either. And last time I checked, Monsanto was all over the place. There's a very, very few countries that have kicked out Monsanto. Very, very few. Seeking to identify the cause for such rapid declines in insect populations, a survey conducted in 2012 by the Zoological Society of London shows a staggering 45% decline in invertebrate abundance in the last 4 decades. 45% decline. The importance of the role of insects in the global ecosystem cannot be understated, as ecological collapse starts from the bottom up. Jeff Boxall, Secretary of Zoological Society in London, sums it up well here by saying, invertebrates are one of the essential foundations of healthy ecosystems that we depend on. Almost every marine fish that forms part of the human food chain will have fed on invertebrates at some time during its development. For example, we directly consume invertebrates, such as shellfish or their products, such as, I think he mean other products, such as honey, but our awareness of the importance of invertebrates has generally been low, even though we rely on invertebrates to pollinate our crops, to reprocess our waste, and to deliver a multitude of other services. This situation is now changing, and research has also highlighted the importance of invertebrates as regulators of ecosystem processes. In his final thoughts, sadly, the burden of changing this falls squarely on the shoulders of global industry leaders. However, as individuals, we can help affect change by altering our buying habits, choosing to support organic food producers, and by creating healthy habits for bees and other insects in our neighborhoods and communities. But he hit it right on the head first. This squall falls squarely on the shoulder of global industry leaders. This isn't you or me in my backyard gardening with organic compost soil, and we have to go, because again, assuming I did everything right and grew everything in my backyard and fed my family somehow and did it the natural way, what would that have to do with? How would that help the rest of the world in any way, shape, or form? It wouldn't. I'd have this little tiny microism, ecosystem in my backyard that was virtually useless because the rest of the world is what's, really being affected. So you have to go where the mass production is of this, or the mass problem is, and that is big pharma, big agrochem, you name it, etc. And unfortunately, there's this thing called money and profits and not giving a shit about anything else but those things. Profit and money. So unfortunately, I think some pain and suffering is going to come. And it might even do us some good as a human species. It might even do us some good. Put down the Pokemon phone and pay attention. Take care.